Over the last couple years, I've started to introduce PTZ cameras into my setup, both my home studio setup and my professional event live streaming setup. The reason I like PTZ cameras are because you can really do more with less people. By being able to pan, tilt, and zoom and do it all remotely, PTZ cameras allow you to get more out of one camera. I really enjoy them. Now, there are a couple different ways you can control your PTZ cameras. You can use the remotes that are pretty much included with every PTZ camera. Even different manufacturers tend to include a remote, but definitely check on that specific brand to make sure you actually get a remote, because they do help you with presets and the ability to pan, tilt, and zoom. And then recently I've been using my HuddleCam HD controller. Now, I prefer to use a controller because you can actually control multiple cameras daisy chained together and set presets all from a controller, and being able to use the joystick makes it easier to get those perfect shots. Being able to pan in slow, to pan out fast, tilt fast, you get the point. So using a controller is a preferred method. But just recently I received a brand new controller that will now be incorporated into my setup. In this video, I'm going to share with you my first impressions of the PTZ Optics Superjoy controller. Hey, what's going on everybody? Monte Weaver here, helping you navigate this world of digital, tech, and social media. If you're brand new here, make sure you hit that red subscribe button and make sure that you hit that thumbs up button if you want to see more videos related to live streaming and tech. Today, I want to walk you through the initial impressions of my brand new Superjoy controller from PTZ Optics. I just received this controller and I'm super excited to get started using it because I'm doing a lot more hybrid live streaming events. And this controller is going to give me the ability to do some things I haven't been able to do in the past. So let's get started walking through some of the basics features of this Superjoy controller and the benefits of being able to use something like this if you have a small team. Let's first start by taking a look at the physical controller. As you can see, it's an all black finish. I really like the new look, the design of this brand new controller. Now, one thing that you will keep in mind is you may want to keep a cloth next to you because your fingerprints will definitely show on this controller. So I've already found myself trying to wipe it down and keep it clean as much as I possibly can. Now, this controller comes with a lot more buttons than I previously had on my HuddleCam HD controller. And these functions are functional buttons, which is what I really like. Because sometimes you'll get devices that give you a lot of buttons, but you don't use any of them. In this case, I think I will be using a lot of the buttons because they allow you to pan, tilt, and zoom, but they also allow you to change different features of the camera. And because I'm using PTZ Optics cameras, these work natively because the controller was built for PTZ Optics cameras, and being able to set the gain, the white balance, the backlight, the exposure, autofocus, the zoom speeds, all of that can be done inside of the controller right on the panel. Rather than trying to use a remote or log into the interface and make changes to the cameras, I can now do all of that on the Superjoy controller itself. Another feature of this particular controller is the LCD panel screen. This allows you to see all your menu settings and be able to use the joystick to simply go down the entire spectrum of changes and make any adjustments that you need. Along with the buttons and the dials to change settings on the camera, you also have 4 custom buttons. These can be set up and customized to control things such as your lights and your office space and much more. I've seen a couple videos and I'm going to dive into that later on in a future video of how I can use the 4 custom buttons to really max out the power of this Superjoy controller. Just below your custom buttons, you have 6 camera buttons that allow you to easily control 6 cameras, but you can definitely control more than 6 PTZ cameras with this controller. And you also have your buttons that allow you to set up your presets and recall those presets, just like you do on your standard controllers for PTZ Optics. Now, PTZ Optics really thought through putting this controller together. By taking input from users around the world that use this type of equipment, they've introduced basic mode in matrix mode. Now, the basic mode will allow you to set up presets and have limited functionality, which is great if there's going to be a team or other individuals using the joystick and you don't want them to make any massive changes. Whereas the matrix mode gives you the full flexibility and range of what this controller can actually do. So being able to introduce basic mode and matrix mode will allow you to feel more comfortable if you're not the one actually behind the controller. And if someone thinks they can make a change, if it's in basic mode, you can rest assured that you don't have to worry about coming back to a setup that has been completely dismantled. Now, once you've been doing video for a little while, and especially live video, an element that you definitely want to have is the ability to see the output of the live feed. Now, I use an ATEM mini switcher and that allows me to do so, but it also is included now in the Superjoy controller using the HDMI output. This allows you to see the output of the camera that you're controlling. And again, we'll test this out because I'm going to be doing many more hybrid conference events and taking this with me. So being able to send something like a program feed out to the stage speaker is something that I can do easily with this controller, and I don't have to make any adjustments with my current ATEM setup. I'm looking forward to testing out all the functionality of this controller. And finally, on top of the control panel, we have our joystick, which feels really good. And something I noticed right out of the box without having to go in and set up anything is the pan and the tilting is much smoother than what I'm accustomed to. It doesn't herky jerk, it doesn't move really fast, and it doesn't move really slow. Right out of the box, I really like the speed configurations of the controller, but if you want to set different speeds, you can easily do that using the controls that are on top of the controller. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, this is an NDI controller, which allows you to put it on your network. You don't have to physically connect your cameras directly to it. Now, I'm going to be using this in both manners because when I go and do a hybrid live stream conference, I like to just hardwire everything if possible, just because it's the easiest and fastest method. Not all the time will I have access to that place's network. So if their internet connection can't be found, if it's in a location that's just hard to access, I want to be able to physically connect my controller to my cameras, which I can do so using my RS-232 feed. Now, if I do have access to a network, I can easily plug in an Ethernet cable into the back of this controller and control all my cameras over the network by connecting those appropriately as well. And along with the Ethernet port, the other two ports that I'm going to be using more often are that HDMI port for sending a program feed out that I talked about, and the USB 2.0 port that you can use for firmware updates. So now that I've got my initial impressions out of the way about some of the features of this Superjoy controller, I'm really ready to dive full into using it because there's so many things that this controller can do that my HuddleCam HD couldn't. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're just getting started and you need a simple device to control your cameras, your PTZ cameras, the HuddleCam HD has done wonders for me and it has really come in handy. But now I really want to be able to do more on the network, and using the PoE controller like this, it will allow me to do so. So if you guys have questions about the PTZ Optics Superjoy controller, make sure you post those in the comments below. This will allow me to know what you guys are looking for in a controller, and maybe I can show you some of the features of it even more in depth that will make sure that this is a good fit for your workstation and your overall live streaming workflow. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you watch some of the other videos here on the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.